You can ask them, sometimes they might retell the story, but they may tell you way too much information, or they may not tell you enough. So you can always help them structure that by asking them, well, tell me what happened in the beginning, what happened in the middle, what happened in the end. You could ask them, what was the problem? What was the solution? Pay attention to the sequencing, and help them if they get it out of order or they miss something important. So you might want to say first, this, second, this, last, and using those transitional words, that will also help, and lends itself also to writing. Read the book or passage with your child. That always helps. Give them a piece of paper and ask them to draw pictures of what they're saying in the story. So that always helps too. It helps them with visualizing, and that is a very strong way to help students with comprehension. And then the last thing is that I can think of is keeping tracks. And keeping tracks is very effective, especially as students are reading chapter books or longer stories, and they're picking it up and putting it down, picking it up and putting it down. And so when you keep tracks, what you do is you give them sticky notes, and after they read, you can start by scaffolding this and make it simple, and then make it a little more complex as they get into reading bigger books. But you would have them summarize the important part on that page, and it would just be bulleted, and they would, on that page. And then the next page, they would do the same thing. Somebody had their mic on. But and then what you would do is over time, you would make that more like at the end of a chapter. So what was this chapter? Can you sum up this chapter? Put some bullet points on the sticky note and put it on the end of this chapter. And so then tomorrow, when they go to read chapter 2, before they read chapter 2, they would read their tracks. What happened in chapter 1, and be a good little refresher of where they left off, and then go to the next chapter and do the same thing at the end of chapter 2. So that's kind of the goal. It helps students tremendously. I used it in my classroom, and it really, really made a big difference. All right, let's see. So one of the things, you're wanting to do is definitely promote your child to be an independent reader. And so here are some things that you can do at home to help promote that. You can have them reenact their favorite books. That's a lot of fun, and it engages the student in it. You can provide a cozy space for them to read, have a reading center or a reading tent or a little reading nook at home. That always helps and encourages reading. Have family reading time. You could do stop, drop, and everybody read at home. That there's no boundary to that, but definitely being a role model at home, and they see you have a love for reading, or that you're reading. Even when you're reading a recipe, bring your child into the kitchen and say, okay, let's read this recipe together. And just every opportunity to show them that you're reading all the time as an adult. And it is very important that they learn to grow and love that, grow a love for reading. You can have them read aloud with your child, host a book club with some families and friends. You could do it virtually or face-to-face with kids in the neighborhood or something like that. You could read different types of text, and I think that's really important too. Like I was saying, using of recipes, but magazines, newspapers, online articles, blogs, all of those things. Keep a reading log. Have them start, write down what they're reading and keep up with it. And you could use a reward system at home, where they could earn incentives for maybe minutes they've read. I know like Dollar Tree has those little bitty charts that have the little squares in them in the educational section. I think they're like $1, and you could just put a sticker in it for every day that they're reading their 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And then when they get the whole card filled up, it doesn't have to be something that costs money, but it could be something like, we go to the park, or we do, something, a family game or something like that. But anything you can do to encourage your child to read at home. The more they read, the better readers they're going to be, right? So we want them to read the most they can. All right, Andrea.
Thank you, Ms. Nunn. Nunn has talked about that love of reading with your students. making sure that you find that time every night to get in those 20 minutes, like we talked about at the very beginning. You may go, but where do we find these books? The nearest library is miles and miles away from my home. Well, here at GCA, we have an online library that is called Sora. Students can enter Sora via Clever. And we want to make sure that you are taking advantage of this wonderful, wonderful tool that we have here at GCA. So, again, go into Clever, find Sora, and then you will have our virtual library. Strategies for Writers will be delivered tonight by Miss Ashley Shepard.
Good evening. I'm the 3rd through 5th ELA Academic Administrator, which is just a fancy way of saying that I help the teachers with instructional strategies. So now we're going to switch gears to talking about writing. So these are some strategies for writers that you can use with your student. If your student is an early writer, and that means that they maybe are not as developed as they could be, then we really want to focus on copying words from around the house. And just like Miss Nunn said, even in the kitchen, on their toys, there's so many different places that students could copy and practice finding those words in context. Then having daily journal writing, and this could be a combination of pictures and words. It doesn't strictly have to be words. And for that, it's just a time for students to pick up the aspect of fluency in writing, which means to just write. So when you think about authors, when they're writing books, or articles or whatever the case may be, when they do their first draft, it's just to get their ideas out. And so that's what we really want our kids to do, is to focus on just getting those ideas on the paper and practicing writing. We don't have to worry about spelling, punctuation, grammar at that point. It's their journal, it's their safe space. Then when we get into the publishing part, publishing and writing, they can make a book out of their writing. And that could physically be where maybe you just have some construction paper and some lined paper and staple it together. Or there are actually companies where you can send off your book and get a hardbound book from it as well. Writing a letter to a family or friend is also another great option. Our students, they probably don't get a lot of mail, and so they probably would find it very interesting, the whole concept of getting a stamp, and excuse me, my computer's about to die, getting a stamp, putting in the mailbox, or even going to the post office is something that's a bit of a foreign concept to them. So taking that time to find somebody in their life to write them a letter, pen pal style, things of that sort, is definitely something that would encourage them and get them excited about writing. Using a free choice topic or giving your students a topic. So this really depends on your writer. If you have a student who is someone who gets caught up in not being able to write on topic, then let them choose. It could be about their favorite TV show. It could be a character, anything that they really are interested in, because we just want them to be able to write at this point, just to practice it. And then we'll worry about focusing on certain topics. Using just Googling writing prompts. There's tons of writing prompts out there. You can just type in writing prompts for 3rd graders. That's a way to find different items that your students could write about. Focusing on nonfiction and fiction writing. So writing that is real or writing that's imaginary. Those are both great options for our students. Comic books. Now, I know comic books, graphic novels sometimes get a bad rap because they're not real books, but they definitely are. They include writing. It's an opportunity for your students to read. So those are fair game as well. Writing a story together. So this could be something where you are taking turns. So maybe you write the introduction or you write the first sentence, and then you pass it over to your student to write the next sentence, and you go back and forth. And this could be something that your whole family does together. It doesn't just have to be you and your student. Start a story and then let your kid finish it. So same kind of concept. You might start the first half, and then the student has to finish it off. And this is actually a task that they may see when they take the milestones, depending upon their grade level and how the test may change this year, is to finish a story. So that's an excellent way to practice. Oh, and sorry, let me go back. And so on the right, you see some of the resources that we have inside of Clever to help your student be able to write as well. So we have Writable and then Writing A to Z. So you might see your students using these with their teachers. Next, so incorporating reading and writing in our world is very important. We know that our students, and really kids everywhere, they have to know the why. Why am I doing this? Why is this important? And you can make this a family fun activity. So there's tons of games that involve reading and writing, such as Scrabble, Apples to Apples, and they have a junior version, so it'd be a little bit more appropriate for your students. Boggle is another great one. Headbands is one as well. If you are not wanting to go out and purchase any of these games, sometimes libraries have them available that you can check out. Or there is a version of headbands that's called, my mind just stopped. I can't remember the name of it, but it's an app that you can download, and I'll get it and put it in the chat later. But you put the phone on your head, and then your family has to, or whoever you're playing with has to guess what it is by giving you words. So heads up. Thank you, Principal Molinex. Okay, I was gonna mention it before, and then my brain just stopped working. Yes. So if you want to download that on your tablet or your phone or any device that you have, that's when you can start today. All right. Also, like Ms. Nunn said earlier, keeping in mind that reading and writing is all around us. We want our students to find relevancy, meaning we want them to understand why it's important to know how to do these things. And so I have a 2-year-old, and we are already practicing these things. He helps me in the kitchen, and he is not able to read fully, of course, just yet. However, he is starting to recognize patterns of words, or like Chick-fil-A, he knows that symbol because we get Chick-fil-A sometimes. And so there's certain things you can do to make sure your student has those markers so that they're able to see, wow, reading and writing is really important. It's not just something my teacher and my parents or my grandparents or my learning coaches want me to know how to do. It's something that I'm going to have to use for the rest of my life. And so here are some ways you can practice reading and writing in everyday life. Cooking recipes, definitely great options there. Putting together furniture. Generally, they come with manuals or even their toys as well, coming with steps or knowing how to put in the batteries in the toys. Driving down the street, looking at billboards, street signs, names of stores. And even if your learner is not able to read the entire title, you could focus on just the beginning of those words. And so, like, for example, going back to Chick-fil-A, the ch sound, that's something they can start to recognize, that CH. Well, where else can we find CH? Cheetos, chips. So those are options to help your student have a connection to it as well. Watching TV shows or movies with closed captions on. This is an excellent way for especially our English language learners, because you're able to hear it in one language, but then also, well, you could do it either way. You could either have it both be in English, or you could have the captions be in your home language and then have the audio in your in English, and vice versa. Or if you're not an English language learner, having them both in English is also a great way to become a faster and better reader. And growing up, I always had the closed captions on because my mom was always on the phone. And so it just made it a lot easier for me to read things quickly and to be able to pick up what was going on in the scenes. Reading menus, once again, is another great option as well. All right, so when we are focusing on helping our students read, we want to move past just recall. And what that means is sometimes students memorize words. And in some cases, that's great. In other cases, that isn't really helping them at a deeper level of comprehension. So we want them to be able to understand what that word means. Or we also want them to be able to, or not or, and we want them to be able to articulate or say why they're able to answer a question, how they got their answer, where they found it from. So when we're starting to combine reading and writing, this is a great opportunity here to do this. If your student's not ready to do that, to explain their thinking and writing, you could have them just say it out loud. And when they are doing that, we want to ask them questions that help us to understand that they understand what they've read. So asking them things like, where did you find your answer? How do you know this is correct? Prove it's right. Or prove I'm wrong. That last one, kids love that because they love telling grown-ups that they're wrong. And so asking them a trick question is a great way to really keep them on their toes and make sure that they're following along as well. And over here, we have a little guy with a magnifying glass because we teach our students to be reading detectives, reading and writing detectives, to find those clues and then to be able to use evidence or clues from the text. All right, so here you'll see a few examples of journals or notebooks that students might have. So this depends on which class your student is in. Some teachers choose to do these physically. Other teachers choose to do this interactively online. So you might see your students working in Google Slides. If you're familiar with PowerPoint, same kind of concept, it's just online. And it's something where the students are jotting down their ideas, they are asking questions, they are summarizing. For example, third grade just started their novel study on Charlotte's Web. And so their interactive notebook is digital. And they chose that to be able to work interactively with their students. So teachers are able to comment directly on the students' work, and it sends them a notification. And then students are able to jot their ideas real time. The teacher's able to give feedback and things of that sort. So checking in with your student and asking them, what did you learn today in ELA class? Show me what you worked on. I know sometimes as a learning coach here, it can be a little overwhelming to keep track of all the different assignments and activities. And some of our friends say, oh, yeah, I definitely turned my work in. I did it. And you, as a learning coach, might not always be so sure. So, one way to just kind of check up on them and let them know you're keeping an eye on them is to ask them to show you what they've done for that day. And then that way you can see what items that they've worked on as well.
Let's do where some of these resources are actually found. Our ELA resources that Ms. Shepherd has mentioned are found in our Clever app. So you'll log in and your student's Clever account, and GCA has many types of programs to help your student read and write. Most of these are found in Clever, and students can log in using that Gmail account. Take a look at a few of these that are found in Clever that you may already be aware of. Got that Nearpod, that IXL, and Vocabulary, Brain Pop, and Study Island are other features that are not necessarily in that Clever, but will also be used during your class time with students. Okay, other things we're using, FLVS, TutorMe, Writable, and News ELA. You should be seeing all of these at some point during your child's year here at GCA. And again, log in and you will be able to see. As I'm mentioning logging in, log in. We want you to be a part of classrooms. We invite you to attend a session and go in and see what your student is learning. And with what your student is learning, also stay informed. We're going to put a link in the chat where you will find the K5 standards. These are our Georgia Standards of Excellence. And this tells you what your child should be able to do by the end of that grade level. So again, stay informed, but also you are invited to class. And let me go ahead and grab that link right now. And I will go ahead and put it in the chat. Here you go. I encourage each of you to go to this website and check this out for yourself. We want to thank you for coming tonight. Thank you also for being part of our GCA family. It has been a pleasure to share a little time with each of you this evening, and we hope to see you again at another parent night. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. We're here to help and here to support you and your student. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, please return back to the main room or log out. Have a great evening. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our portion. You may log out now or return to the main room and log out. Thank you again for coming.